Okay, you know what, Dilip, just stay with us. I'm going to quickly cut across to the India Economic Conclave, currently in conversation with Naveen Jindal, Rajan Bharti Mittal, Ajay Bijli, as well as Sumant Sinha, and as to how the economy can really revive and how the individual companies and sectors have fought the pandemic so far.
Government will get a lot more revenue. There'll be a lot of employment opportunities for the youth. And now similarly, just recently, the MMDR bill has been passed. So with that also, we'll see a lot more iron ore mine coming in for auction, a lot more minerals. All sorts of minerals will get kind of freed. So and all these things are really, really positive and bold moves. And then privatization. I mean, I really believe that government should not be in the business. It's government's business not to be in the business. So with all the push on privatization and commercial coal mining, so I think it's all, and building infrastructure, these are all very welcome steps and steps in the right direction.
All right. Let me bring Sumant in as well. He's joining us remotely, of course. But Sumant, if you can hear us.
Yes, I can.
Yes, let me get you in on this in terms of really the impetus, the stimulus that's been provided by the government. Where are you at on that? Okay, I'll come back across to...
Sorry, I just lost you for a second. Can you just repeat the question, please?
Sure. I was talking about the kind of stimulus measures, the policy reform that the government has undertaken in order to kickstart things, and whether you feel, particularly even post the budget, that these have been in the right direction and have already had a resulting impact, actually. I mean, how would you quantify that? Do you feel it's been enough? Would you have liked to see more? Where do you feel it's had the maximum impact?
Yeah, thank you so much. So, I think that as people say, a crisis forces the mind to think more clearly. And I think what the COVID crisis has done is that it has actually sort of got the government to think about really taking more bolder steps and taking steps that I think in the long run will have a significantly positive impact for the economy. And so the first thing I think, of course, is the strong focus that we had on fiscal deficit containment. That is something that they've put on the side. And they've said, you know what, we're going to actually have a fiscally expansionary budget and use that money prudently in a number of areas, and I'll talk about what those are, and really go for growth. So I think this mentality shift of really going for growth is something that is at one level very positive, and it marks, I think, a big shift from the fiscal sort of prudence-oriented strategy that we had earlier. So the question now, of course, is this extra money, where is that going to be spent? And clearly there are a couple of things that they've announced. First of all, this whole issue of the PLI scheme, the building out, the production-linked incentive scheme to encourage manufacturing in a number of different sectors. I think that will be very positive in kickstarting growth in a number of manufacturing areas. The second really is investments in infrastructure, again, allocating more capital to road building, railways, and so on. So I think all of that, again, will have its own multiplier effect as infrastructure build-out begins to happen. So I think there are a number of things that they've done just in how this money will be used, this extra money, to actually focus on and push growth. And once that begins to happen, it will start leading to demand creation across a wide swathe of the economy and will hopefully therefore lead to these 11 to 13% growth numbers for the coming financial year. And then hopefully we sort of sustain on a higher trajectory after that. The other thing is they've also taken this opportunity now to make a couple of other fundamental shifts in philosophy. The issue of privatization, the issue of denationalizing the public sector banks, coming out of this issue of strategic PSUs in certain very specific sectors. I think those are also very significant philosophical shifts on the part of the government. And I think what really will likely happen from all of this is that we'll create a structurally sounder economy that hopefully will have legs for longer term sustainable growth. So after the 11 to 13% next year, hopefully we continue to get back onto a growth path that is maybe 7 or 8% or higher. If you recall, we'd gone down to about 4% or thereabouts in the couple of years leading up to the COVID crisis. And the hope and the expectation would be that now we'll get back into a higher growth trajectory after this.
Okay. Fantastic. So that sets the lay of the land on consumption. And Ajay, I'll come to you. You already know what to expect. But I'm curious, yours has been one of the sectors that have been hardest hit.
Yeah.
How do you see the bounce back? How do you see the recovery for you?
Obviously, this is something which nobody has ever experienced before. But I am a little skeptical when people use the word disruption very loosely, because disruption is destruction according to me. I think its life is interrupted for some people and disrupted for some people. Obviously, who've lost their loved ones and have been impacted by this pandemic, my heart goes out to them. But at the same time, there are some activities which have got impacted, and that's an interruption, and especially in a market like India, where people love going out and watching films. Secondly, just human nature. Human beings are just social animals, and they have to go out. And you can't judge half a life that we are living with the half the world that is open. I think so when the world is going to open, the pent-up demand for people to go out, we are not designed to be incarcerated, is just huge. And, to stay at home. And India makes, why I like India as a market, as opposed to other markets like US and England and Australia, which are very badly hit, of my industry I'm talking about, cinema exhibition industries, because they only make about 100 films in a year. India makes 1,800 films in a year. Right. And we sell about 1.45 billion tickets in a year. Last year, the world, till March 2015, March 15, 2020, had 6 billion tickets sold all over the world. $42 billion was the box office collections. So none of these OTT platforms, which is probably what you'll allude to later, can compensate for the kind of theatrical economic rationale which is there. 70% of the revenues of any content that gets created still comes from theatrical. So there's an aberration. And I'm a long-term believer in the market, long-term believer in the business. I think when the pandemic gets sorted out and people will bounce back, the sector will bounce back. And I'm not saying it as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Right. I'm saying it because I do actually believe we are not all designed to stay at home. We have to go out.
You have been very optimistic, Ajay, and we've seen that in the kind of plans you've announced and the forward-looking, plans that you've also discussed. But tell me, does the fear of a second wave throw a spanner in the works there? Are you concerned? Is it real? Is it an evolving situation? Again, I ask because coming from one of the industries that's been worst affected, you've really come out of the worst year possible, right? And even if you're optimistic at the moment, can this derail your plans?
Of course, absolutely. I mean, as I said, humanity, I'm not going to be that myopic and only think about my industry. Humanity matters to me more. So, of course, if the second wave comes, or in the Europe and US, the third wave they're talking about, it is bad. It's bad for everyone. So, first of all, normalcy has to return, where people feel safe going out. The pandemic comes under control. Then I'm just a subset of everybody feeling safe and happy, and then we'll bounce back. But of course, it concerns me.
Okay, we'll come back to that again in a moment. Mr. Mittal, on one hand, we've seen tremendous growth, of course, in digitization and the way people have been communicating. On the other hand, on the business side, there's been somewhat of a loss of reasonability in the industry. How do you see things evolving as we move forward?
My industry, I have to say, is probably one of the favorite subjects of this government and also the Prime Minister. And as an industry leader, I can tell you, the industry has been, we can talk about numbers and figures, those matter, those count. But we always have been looking forward for the government to stand up and say that wealth creators will be respected. Industry making profits is a good thing because that's how the job creation will happen. And from industry point of view, it was actually a great, endorsement from the Prime Minister on the floor of the House to say, we will respect you. Having said that, and we have seen how people have been working from home, people have been locked in, the entire telecom and the digitization program of over the last 20 years, I have to say, has really held this country in a very good stead. And I believe while this industry has gone through many avatars, but this has been the time where I think India has been connected really from one end to the other end. And I can tell you, I have live experiences where people have used technology for healthcare, and we've seen education, how people have been taught at home, and of course banking. So really speaking, this has been the bridge to all that we've gone through. And I'm hoping that This pandemic must end. It's not about the industry, it's about people. And I'm hoping that the second wave does not happen. People need to be vaccinated far quickly than what we are doing. We're a large country, large population, and we have to be careful. And keeping that the global indices are down, is going to reflect on us. While we can say the FDI is coming in, but I really need to figure out between FDI and FPI money coming in, as you know, and hopefully with all the Atmanirbhar and all the PLIs, which Sumant also alluded to, I hope, and keeping the geopolitics in mind where China is today versus us and globally, it's a great opportunity for India to raise the manufacturing bar. You know, we are at about 16% to 17% of GDP. Any economy must have about 25% plus on manufacturing, about 50% industry, and then agriculture. That's the kind of mix that we would like to see. And it's a great move from the government to say manufacturing must be progressed.
Okay, that touched upon a lot of important points. Naveen, we've also seen the return of core sectors, and look at where steel is today. Prices are once again at a high, inventories at a low. It's an ideal situation. It's almost too good to be true. Do you see this lasting? Is it a 12 to 18-month phenomenon? Is it a longer-term structural change?
Okay, that's a very difficult question to answer. A lot of people do answer that. They say, I mean, I believe Mr. Jhunjhunwala was here this morning, and he spoke about like next 5 to 8 years is supposed to be very good for the steel industry. But we as a steel producer, we don't think like that. We feel that we have to be so good in producing steel or power or whatever we do, even if the industry goes down, we should be the last company standing. We should be so efficient, we should be so good in what we do, because we've seen this, you know, industry goes up and down, but few stars are always there. But since you spoke about the industry, I do feel that in India especially, our per capita consumption is only 75 kg per person per annum, whereas the world average is more than 220. So this per capita consumption would definitely, I mean, with all the estimates and quality of life improving of the people, we feel that in the next 10 years, this will go from 75 to 160. So that would mean doubling of the steel production here. So that's why we feel there is a good future for steel and also power. I mean, our per capita consumption of power is only 1100 kilowatt hours per person per annum. That's like 3 units per day per person. Whereas in the US and Europe, it is 10 times more, 15 times more. So if we want Indians to have better quality of life, then everyone must have electricity. Everyone must live in a home. We must have good infrastructure, and these are the basics, electricity and steel, that go into building the infrastructure and improving the quality of life. So we feel that in India, because there's so much dearth of these things, that, you know, I mean, so much needs to be done. So there's going to be good demand in the medium term.
Okay, well, talking about power, Sumant, let me bring you back in as well. And, you're in a segment where, of course, there's immense disruption. Solar, EV, they've become buzzwords, in the last year or so, more than ever before. Talk to us a little bit about the changes that you're seeing there.
Yeah, thank you. So look, there are immense changes taking place in our sector. And I think we're living through what you may say is almost like a once in a lifetime kind of energy transition that is happening around us. And, Naveen mentioned some numbers on per capita consumption of power. The reality is, like everything else in India, our per capita consumption is very low in power, and it will double over the next 12 to 14 years. But within that doubling, there is this big transition happening from conventional power to renewable energy. And so renewables is going to grow significantly faster just to basically take advantage of this growth opportunity. And given its cheapness at this point in time, it will become the default choice for the future. And, the Prime Minister, as you know, has set a target of getting to 450 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2030, up from the current installed capacity of 90 gigawatts. And that means a 5 times growth in the next 10 years. But interestingly, that means an addition of 360,000 megawatts of new renewable energy capacity, which is equal to almost equal to India's entire power sector installed capacity from all sources at this point in time. So we're talking about a really, really sizable and significant investment plan just in renewables, and then the attendant investments in transmission infrastructure, on the distribution side. This is going to end up being at least a $500 billion or more investment opportunity just in India over the next 10 years. And then, there are, of course, attendant transitions happening or revolutions happening in the other areas of energy. For example, you talked about electric vehicles. Today, mobility consumes almost a third of the total energy that is consumed globally.